These are the plants that can kill you with a single gram. Yet for centuries, healers have been using them in doses measured by the drop to save lives. This is the hidden world of drop dosage botanicals, where the line between medicine and murder is measured in fractions of a milliliter. In 1541, a Swiss physician named Paracelsus died, leaving behind a principle that would define toxicology for the next 500 years. Paracelsus wrote that all things are poison, and nothing is without poison. He wrote that the dosage alone makes it so a thing is not a poison. It is a deceptively simple idea. Water can kill you if you drink too much. Arsenic, in trace amounts, exists naturally in your food. The question was never whether something is toxic. The question is always how much. And nowhere is that question more dangerous or more fascinating than in the practice of drop dosing. Drop dosing is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of measuring herbal medicine in teaspoons or milliliters, practitioners measure it in individual drops. 1 drop, 3 drops, sometimes as little as 1/30th of a drop. These are not your chamomile teas or elderberry syrups. These are some of the most lethal plants on earth, administered at doses so small they seem almost homeopathic, though practitioners are quick to point out that they are not. The herbs are real, the chemistry is real, and the margin for error is terrifyingly thin. So what are these plants, and why would anyone risk using them? A drop is not just a metaphor in this world. It is a unit, precise, measurable, and unforgiving. In historical pharmacopoeias, 1 drop is defined as roughly 0.05 milliliters. This is the ruler by which healers have measured the line between life and death. The arithmetic is simple but relentless. The strength of the tincture multiplied by the volume of a single drop equals the dose. If a tincture contains 1 milligram of active alkaloid per milliliter, then each drop delivers 0.05 milligrams. That is all it takes, sometimes less. Practitioners of drop dosing are not working with vague handfuls or pinches. They are calculating fractions, measuring out medicine with glass droppers and steady hands, knowing that a single extra drop can turn a remedy into a poison. This is not homeopathy. The chemistry is real, the molecules are present, and the effects are measurable. The margin for error is razor thin. John Scudder, the 19th century eclectic physician, wrote that the proper dose is much smaller than most would suppose possible. He was not exaggerating. In this practice, the difference between healing and harm comes down to arithmetic. 1 drop at a time. These are not herbs for the untrained or the reckless. Here, dosage is destiny, and the smallest miscalculation can have the gravest consequences. Aconite stands at the very edge of what drop dosing dares to attempt. Known as wolf's bane and monk's hood, this plant has haunted both healers and executioners for centuries. Its active compound, aconitine, locks open the body's sodium channels, short-circuiting the nerves, flooding the heart with electrical chaos. The difference between a healing drop and a fatal one is not poetic. It is chemical. In animal studies, the lethal dose is measured at just 0.2 milligrams per kilogram. For humans, 2 to 4 milligrams, barely the weight of a pencil tip, can be enough to stop the heart. And yet, eclectic physicians like John Scudder prescribed half a drop of a 1 to 1,000 tincture, aiming for a dose of 0.05 milligrams, just below the threshold of danger. Scudder's instructions were exacting, no more, no less. He wrote, "The proper dose is much smaller than most would suppose possible, but even the most precise hands cannot erase the risk." Between 1993 and 2005, nearly 5,000 cases of aconite poisoning were recorded worldwide, most from accidental ingestion or mislabeling in herbal teas. In 2010, a London coroner's inquest confirmed aconitine as the agent in a fatal curry poisoning. 1 gram of dried root was enough to kill. Dr. Maria Hernandez, a toxicologist, puts it simply, aconitine's affinity for open sodium channels makes it a textbook example of the dose makes the poison. A few micrograms can be therapeutic, milligrams are lethal. Stories swirl around aconite, from whispered tales of Cleopatra's alleged use to state executions in ancient Rome. But the historical record is clear. No myth is needed. The facts alone are enough. Aconite is the proof that a single drop can heal or kill. The line is drawn with a trembling hand, and the margin for error is measured in fractions of a milligram. Belladonna's story is a study in seduction and peril. In Renaissance Italy, beauty manuals from 1563 recommended a drop of belladonna tincture in each eye. The effect was immediate. Pupils widened, gaze softened, and the name belladonna, meaning beautiful lady, became legend. Portraits of noblewomen, their eyes impossibly dark, record the fashion. The cost, however, was not just vanity. Atropine, the plant's active alkaloid, blocks muscarinic receptors, disrupting the body's control over heart rate, sweat, and vision. A dose as small as 10 to 20 milligrams of pure atropine can stop a heart, and yet the same compound remains essential in modern medicine. Atropine is still used to dilate pupils, resuscitate slow hearts, and counteract nerve agents. Shakespeare's Macbeth invoked the plant as a poison for armies, a nod to its reputation for both witchcraft and warfare. Today, belladonna's danger is not just historical. In the United States, around 150 people, mostly children, are hospitalized each year after accidental ingestion, often from the plant's tempting berries. The margin between allure and disaster remains a single drop. Lobelia inflata, known as Indian tobacco, was once a staple in the Eclectic physician's kit. A single drop of tincture was prescribed for asthma, spasms, or as a supposed aid to quit smoking. Practitioners claim that lobelia's emetic effect was its own safety net. Take too much, and the body would reject it before true poisoning could set in. The logic seemed unassailable, and yet the chemistry told a different story. Lobeline, the plant's active alkaloid, acts on nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, provoking a cascade from mild stimulation to violent nausea, then to dizziness, bradycardia, and at higher doses, respiratory collapse. Reports surfaced of patients experiencing severe reactions even at doses just above the recommended 1 to 2 drops. The toxic threshold for dried leaf sits at only 0.6 grams, with 4 grams potentially fatal. In 1993, the FDA intervened, issuing a ban on lobelia in over-the-counter supplements after adverse event reports and a lack of proven benefit. The agency's notice warned, "Lobelia is a poisonous plant with unpredictable effects. Its emetic action does not guarantee safety." Here, the folk wisdom of vomiting as a built-in safeguard met the hard limits of pharmacology and the arm of federal regulation. The dropper's precision was not enough. For lobelia, the line between remedy and risk proved too thin for regulators to ignore. In 1775, William Withering, an English physician, confronted a riddle that had confounded his peers. A Shropshire woman, swollen with dropsy and near death, was cured by a folk healer's secret brew. Withering traced the remedy to foxglove, digitalis purpurea, and began a series of methodical experiments, titrating dose by dose, 1 drop at a time. He found that the same plant that could still a racing heart could just as easily stop it forever. The active compound, later named digoxin, works by inhibiting the sodium-potassium ATPase pump in heart cells, raising intracellular calcium and forcing the failing heart to beat stronger. But the window between benefit and disaster is perilously narrow. Therapeutic blood levels hover between 0.5 and 2 nanograms per milliliter. At just above 2.5, the risk of lethal arrhythmias rises sharply. Even today, digoxin overdoses account for a measurable share of emergency hospital visits, most from dosing errors rather than intent. Some believe Vincent van Gogh's yellow-tinged canvases were painted through the lens of digitalis-induced xanthopsia, though the evidence remains circumstantial. What began as a folk cure, measured in drops, has become a prescription drug, regulated, purified, and still dangerous in the wrong hands. Withering's careful notes became the blueprint for modern cardiology, proving that a remedy born in the hedgerows could, with discipline and precision, be tamed for the clinic. In 1845, the Eclectic Medical Institute in Cincinnati received its charter and set out to systematize the perilous art of drop dosing. John Scudder, a leading eclectic, insisted that the proper dose is much smaller than most would suppose possible, and his medication manuals listed exact drop measurements for the deadliest botanicals. Here the doctrine was clear: measure the dose, not the drug. At its height in the 1880s, enrollment neared 1,200 students, each drilled in the arithmetic of risk. But the 1910 Flexner Report condemned the eclectic schools as unscientific, triggering closures across the country. By 1939, the last eclectic college had shuttered. Only the archives survived, rescued by John Uri Lloyd, who feared that without a dedicated repository, the empirical knowledge of our predecessors would vanish forever. Today, the Lloyd Library holds the fragile codex of drop dosage, a record of how medicine once danced on the edge of poison. The regulatory net around drop-dose botanicals is full of holes. In the United States, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994 classifies most herbal products as dietary supplements, not drugs. This means manufacturers are not required to prove safety or effectiveness before selling even the most potent tinctures. The World Health Organization estimates that 80% of the world's population still relies on traditional medicine, often including toxic plants measured by the drop. Licensed herbalists in the United States and New Zealand may prepare microdose tinctures of belladonna or aconite, but the margin for error remains razor thin. Without strict oversight, a single miscalculation can lead to disaster. The chemistry is real, the risks are real, and the law offers little protection for the unwary. Every year, hospitalizations from belladonna and aconite remind us that all things are poison and nothing is without poison. The dosage alone makes it so a thing is not a poison. The line between remedy and fatality remains razor thin. And yet, for skilled hands, that line still holds. Not for amateurs, never for guessing.